All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Spotlight. Today's guest is Jessica Mouw, who I reached out because she is the president of the Psychology Club. But beyond that, as far as I know, you're also the ambassador of the psychology. You are an ambassador of the psychology department.
Yeah, so I'm a Psych Peer ambassador. Do a couple other things on campus. I'm lifestyle editor of Trend magazine. Let's see what else. I'm a peer mentor for the psych department. Lots of other little stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, that's super awesome because I actually just talked to Byung. He does the political, I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name. He does the political stuff for the Trend as well. And I didn't know that you were part of Trend. So maybe I'll get a mention, of you once I talk to him. But I reached out to you because I personally am a psychology major. And so I'm super, nerdy about about all the psychology stuff. But first off, I want to ask you just like, where did your involvement in psychology start? Like, why did you choose it? How did you become the president of the Psychology Club? Like, where did all this stem from? Like, tell me your story in psychology of just how you became you?
Yeah, so I came into college as a psych major, and I do a lot with like recruiting people to psych within the department, and I feel like almost everybody's answer is just, I want to help people in some way, shape, or form, which is also mine. I took a psych class in high school and I really liked my teacher. So I decided to pursue it here. And it was kind of a strange year. It was COVID, fall 2020. It was pretty weird.
Yeah, rough.
But yeah, a lot of online classes, but I was in the learning community. So I was able to get connected to some people involved in the department. I started coming virtually to the psych club meetings. And then my path to president was pretty weird. I applied at the end of my freshman year, literally on a whim in a bathroom upstairs, and like in one of those single bathrooms, because I was like, well, I don't know, I'm gonna be a sophomore, maybe I should try for some leadership in an organization, but also don't really know where to start. I probably won't get it. But then on the last day, something just came over me, and I was like, I'm just gonna submit a video application, and so I did, and that was the space that I found. But I interviewed for to be PR chair because that's my second major. But they actually already had one, and they ended up offering me vice president. So I took it and had a great year last year, and then this year I'm president. So
what does PR stand for again?
Public relations.
Public relations. Okay, because I'd read that and I was like, it doesn't ring a bell for me. But I know what public relations is, but as far as the abbreviation goes. But okay, wait. So then you kind of did it on a whim, and then how long were you vice president before?
I was vice president for all of last year, which was a super cool experience. I loved working with the president, and I felt like it gave me like a really good overview of what it's like to be, a leader in a college organization, how that like differed from involvement that I'd done in the past in high school and other little things. So.
Oh, absolutely. And when it's tailored to something that, you like and you enjoy, because when you're a leader in high school, you're probably the leader of like student council, which you probably don't really care much about. And then but now that you're the leader of a club that you actually have passion for, like that's super awesome. And I mean, that's super cool. How many people are involved in Psych Club, like on a general basis?
Yeah, it definitely depends by the meeting. The way that we do things is very, it's kind of based on both like what we hear that the department wants and people in the department want, and things that we just think would be good ideas. So like, it'll range anywhere from like 5 to like 50, depending on it. Probably about like 20 for the average meeting. We meet bi-weekly and kind of pick different events. So upcoming, we're doing an event for Valentine's Day, hopefully getting some psychologists in to talk about, forming healthy relationships and doing like fun little Valentine's Day stacks and things. Something we really try to prioritize is just making sure it's equal parts like fun and kind of that professional networky type thing.
Yeah, and so what kind of other events do you do on a general basis? So you've kind of covered more so what the fun things are, but when you're getting involved in like the professional networking, like how do you guys do that? What resources do you guys have?
Yeah, so we are lucky enough, as you know, as a psych major, to have like a super cool, cast of professors here, people ranging from all areas of psych. So we reach out to them a lot. We are just getting started with our panel series this semester. We'll be hosting a series of panels from different areas of psychology. Last year, I know we did like clinical counseling, we did industrial organizational, which is kind of my area within psych. We've done sports psychology. That was a really cool one, and I didn't know a lot about that before. We just reach out. Lucky enough, our exec team usually has people that are involved across different areas of psych. So they have individual connections, and we find professors that way, or I just look through the directory, things like that.
And so what are some, because I've reached out to Dr. Hessling, who is my favorite
I love
professor I've ever had. He's so wholesome. He's so adorable.
Yeah.
And then I actually reached out to him to get him on the podcast.
Oh.
And then he just said he was too busy, which is completely understandable. But I would love,
Oh my God,
I'd love to talk to him. But I mean, so do you have a closer relationship to most of these professors because of your position, like in the psychology club? Like, do you get to interact with, professionals in psych very often, or do you only really see it on like the event end of things?
Good question. I would say definitely with Hessling. So he's our faculty advisor, so we have a pretty close relationship with him. All of our exec members do. But as far as the others, I feel like that more interpersonal connection I've gotten through other things I've done within the department. Like I'm a teaching assistant for Psych at the Workplace. I've done ambassadors and being peer mentor. I feel like I've gotten really more close to professors that way. But I definitely think that, just having that, like Psych Club president in my email signature gives me a little more confidence to reach out to people in the department, because it's intimidating, like some of these people have been published and all these crazy things like the DSM and all these studies that are really famous. It's intimidating, but
no, they're big boys. And we had, what was it, Cooper?
Yes.
Who was like on 60 Minutes and like he was famous, so I couldn't imagine reaching out to him.
Yeah, I think Gary Wells was the one on 60 Minutes, but then Cooper was honored last year for something.
Oh, yeah. So we've had a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not even just, which is, I mean, it's so cool that you get to be involved in that. And so how did you get the TA position? Like, how did that work out? Because I've been looking to maybe get a TA position if I could try and get it. But how did you do that? How did that go?
So really it just came up like super randomly. Like I said, kind of within psychology, I kind of teeter between, I'm definitely more on like the business side of psychology, which I feel like people might not really think of just going into psych, which I didn't originally either. So I was in Psych 250, Psych of the Workplace, which is what I TA for now. Worked with Dr. Hannah, she's the professor I TA for. Then got into her 450 club, not got into, signed up for, make myself sound way cooler than I am.
Yeah.
But signed up for 450, which is the advanced version of that class, and just worked really hard in both of those. Always made sure to show my best effort and then just like show up and give it my all whenever I could. And then from there, she just offered me the position. But yeah, I really think that, if any psych major, since it is such like a big and vast department, both just kind of like narrow down your interest a little bit, which I know is so intimidating, which I'm very bad at that, hence why I'm a double major and a minor and I'm all over the place. It's very hard, but like if you find a specific area that you're interested in, even if you're like, I don't know, if I want to do a career in this or my grad program in this, just kind of pursue it and see where it leads, is what I'd say. And from there, just relationships with professors will flow naturally, and you might get offers like that, which I think that was the thing that scared me most going into college, is this idea of like, you have to like network with people and get close to your professors. And it's like, how do I do that? But really, it's just about, showing up and working hard and just being nice whenever you get the chance to interact with them.
Wow, good advice, because I'm trying to start that journey of getting close, and I was hoping that maybe a podcast episode with Dr. Bob would would get that ball rolling. But I'll get there. We'll get there
someday.
So what are the different branches of psychology? Because from what I know, it is like pretty much anything can be wormed into being psychology related.
Yeah.
Or that like you could work anywhere knowing psychology and it would be a benefit. So you're on like the business side of things, but what are some of like the other ones what are the other options?
Yes, and I love that you bring that up. So I'm probably going to go on a little tangent here, but
go at it.
I think when people say like, what are you going to do with psych? I'm like, you're going to do everything with psych. I've gotten internship opportunities and jobs and different leadership opportunities on campus. And it's only ever been an asset to me that I have psych as one of my major backgrounds. Psych is really just getting to know people, behavior and cognition, literally just everything it is about being human. And I think that our curriculum does a great job of just enforcing how people work throughout everything and how to be the best person possible to others. And I think that that's such an incredible value. So really, quick answer is you can do anything with psychology. I've done like human resources, public relations, I've done lots of different stuff, and that background's really, really helped me. But as far as the areas of psych go, we've got, let's see if I can name as many as possible. Industrial organizational, which I was talking about earlier. If you don't know, that's psych of the workplace. It's how do we hire people in ways that are most effective, how we keep people motivated in ways that are effective, et cetera. And there's lots of different avenues you can go down through with that. And then we've got like clinical counseling is probably the most popular, typical therapy, social work's kind of a different area, but that kind of realm of mental health, that's a big one and a growing one, obviously, for all the right reasons. And then we've got like forensic, which we have a really big program here for. Lots of research in psych and law, eyewitness testimony, that type of thing. That's a super cool area. I haven't gotten a lot of time to touch that, but super cool stuff. And then social psych is definitely one of my favorites, as I'm sure it is probably yours.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just kind of what it sounds like, but psychology of how people interact. God, it's like a quiz. I don't remember. There's so many of them.
You are completely good. I think the reason why I asked that is because I wanted people to know that, like, psych isn't just counseling, and it's interesting when people tell you that, and then you're like, oh yeah, I could imagine that, but then they start listing things, and then they just get going. You're like, oh wait, no, it's like it is really just like any possible option for psych you could absolutely do.
No.
And you are right. I am most interested in the social in the social psych, just because I mean I love people and everything. Which brings me to, I wanted to talk about your. You said that you were doing research. You were part of research, and that was for media. Explain, like, talk about that, because I am super interested in what that's about and what you do for that and how that started.
Yeah, definitely. When I first learned that this lab existed, it was actually brought up to me by a former psych club exec officer. She was talking about her lab, and I was like, this is so exciting for me because it literally blends both my majors, and it's super. That's really like my primary interest within psych is, that building relationship that we have between people and technology and social media and, just everything going on that we as humans aren't quite prepared to take on. I think it's such a cool area. So yeah, I work in Dr. Gentile's media research lab under his grad student, LM Kim, who's the best, love her. Shout out with a bunch of different cool RAs. And we run studies on a variety of things. We just got a new one approved, which I'm super excited about. But a lot of it has been about, social media and how it affects your mindset and mood. There's lots, Dr. Gentile in particular has done a lot of research, and I think, don't quote me on this, I think he was one of the primary researchers that got video game addiction into the DSM, which is super cool.
That's
but
awesome.
A lot with video games and virtual reality and, yeah, it's social media, as I said before. That's been super cool work just to observe and see, because, I think that is probably the biggest issue that's affecting us in psychology and will for the coming years. Just because, social media and the internet is such a huge beast, and we don't understand quite yet how to deal with it and how it affects us. And I think that
How do you go about testing something like that? Like, what are some of the, procedures that you guys have done to figure out these things or to test these things with social media?
Yeah, so a lot of the study design is not in my hands personally, but a lot of it, we did the most recent one. I don't know how much I can say on it because I don't think it's been published quite yet.
Oh, okay.
But a lot of seeing how, I'm thinking of how to phrase this best without, don't want to get in trouble with the IRB.
Yeah, this is a spoiler alert.
But basically how, if you go into being a consumer of social media with a certain attitude towards other people and other things and to yourself, how does that affect how you feel before and after you consume that media? Because that's been really cool research to work on because, with the other side of my degree, public relations, I'm really interested in, producing media, creating media that's meaningful for people to consume. And I just really think that, there is a way, I believe, to be able to consume media and catch up with the times in a way that doesn't hurt you, but it's about it's so easy to fall into that slump of going into social media with a negative mindset and it ending up hurting you and inevitably hurting others. So I think that's been really cool research to take part in.
What are some of those negative emotions, negative mindsets that you think exist? If you were to warn people about the negatives, what are your opinions on what do you think people should avoid when being on social media?
I mean, low self-confidence, lack of touch with the state of reality, because as we all know, everybody's social media pages are their highlight reel, and nobody's going to put anything out there that is not them being at their best. So, getting out of touch with reality, as I just said, I think stress, I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed with the amount of notifications that you get every day. And, I think it's so easy that when we live in such an interesting time that's it's beautiful and terrifying that we can see, every walk of life, every possibility, get in touch with as many opportunities as we possibly can in ways that people before us never would have without this technology, which obviously that is great for so many reasons, but it's also like where as a person, in order to stay sane and stay comfortable with yourself and stay confident, do you need to take a step back and realize that that's it? Which I think that that's something that, I think that our generation's pretty more or less good with it. Nobody's immune to that, seeing somebody's pictures or videos or whatever and getting jealous or feeling inferior or whatever. But I think that our generation is pretty in touch with, like what's on, Instagram and TikTok and whatever isn't reality. But I think that, that's a really pressing issue for the kids that are younger than us because it's like they have grown up with that iPad strapped to their head. And, is their reality, which I think is really scary. And yeah.
Do you think that that's the most pressing issue when it comes to negative emotions? Because I think where my mind would have gone to is like, with all the voices that are so loud, it's hard to differentiate between like what represents a majority of opinions and what represents the loudest opinions. And so like the ones that are so loud are the ones that like you think everyone has. And it kind of creates negative stigmas against people like for any reason. And it kind of just creates these assumptions because one voice is so loud that that's just how you assume everyone who has that voice is.
Definitely. That's a huge issue too. And that's actually something that, I'm concerned with on like both sides of my degree, because in public relations, that major is part of here at Iowa State, the Greenlee School, which is advertising, public relations, and journalism. So through that curriculum, you kind of get to play the role of all three. And being in that journalist role in certain parts of my education, it's like I've really become increasingly concerned with media ethics and, how best, like, what are ethical practices for relaying news, writing news, sharing news. And I think that something that's so important is differentiating what is news and what is somebody's reaction to the news, which I think that's something that's really scary, that can get lost in things. And I'm happy to be part of research that'll hopefully, kind of build that literacy.
Do you have some examples of what that would look like? Because I really like that concept of saying the news versus like reacting to the news. Do you have like, a way to kind of dissect that for people and for me?
Yeah, so something that I've been trying to do recently, kind of is, I don't want to say it's a New Year's resolution, but as the semester progresses, as I get like more in depth into both sides of my education, something that I've really tried to focus on is looking at doing a scan of the news on, websites like the New York Times and CNN and BBC and real hard news sources before I even consume a little bit of that reaction piece, because I think it's so easy to go, we like to say, I think that we're a lot less honest with ourselves than we could be about, how informed we are. I'm definitely guilty of being like, I've heard about this, or I know what's going on with this, when all I've done is just gone to Twitter and
heard about it. Yeah.
It's so important, that piece of, taking the time and taking the energy to actually understand the facts of things before, you let yourself get overwhelmed by it, because nobody is immune to that, hysteria. It's so easy to, especially when we're living in this world where, there's so many negative things happening, so many positive things happening also, but so many, violence and hatred and everything. It's so easy to get wrapped up in it. And I think that it's such, we owe it to ourselves to take a break from that overstimulation, but we also owe it to our society to actually engage in those discussions as an informed person. So I think that's something that I've been trying to do to counteract that.
Do you think that maybe that perception on some of that chaos or some of that, our vulnerability to all the stimulation and all the negative things going on, do you think that could be a case of louder voices versus common voices? Or do you think that those voices, or do you think we should kind of consume that media with the idea that this is representative of everything? Do you think that maybe, some of that, because the way that I try to view it is that, when I hear something, especially on especially on the news, when there's a kind of a divide, as to what, what two people could think. Like there's kind of, especially like in politics, so there's a divide in the news. And some people will say that certain newsworthy or some news sources aren't trustworthy and some are, and then the opposite side is saying that it's the other way around. And so like you hear that and then you kind of wonder, I feel like you should take it with this grain of salt. Like, okay, maybe this is trying to invoke emotion out of me and it's not actually, you know, the exact truth. It's just part of the truth, or it's not representative of what's actually happening. It's just kind of representative. Do you kind of feel that in the media, or do you think that that is just not the case?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think, how do I say this? You know, I think that there's probably a little bit, in my personal opinion, I don't know. Sorry, I'm trying to think, like, how do I phrase this?
No problem.
But, you know, I think that, you know, it's important, something that's important is to be a consumer of, you know, I would really recommend if you're following a story or a case or whatever it may be, to get that information from multiple sources and do your research into who's writing this, what publication is publishing it, you know, are they following a certain code of conduct, what have you. But you know, you always hear people be like, if you're going to watch, you know, like 30 minutes of MSNBC, you need to watch 30 minutes of Fox News and whatever, which I think that can be good advice. I like to consume more, you know, middle ground things, sources like, you know, I love the New York Times. I think they're pretty, you know, nonpartisan, pretty straightforward news. I like NPR has a really cool podcast for news. I just think, yeah, I think it's important to spread. If you're reading all of your news from one news source, especially if it's just Twitter, for the love of God, you should expand your
news
source. Or especially even worse if it's TikTok. It's so easy.
Just lie.
Algorithms are so crazy, and it's just so crazy. But yeah, I would definitely say be a consumer of diverse news sources. And I think that too here, we're so privileged at this university to have access to professors, and especially on politics. I took a class my freshman year. I had some interest in maybe political science. I just didn't have time for it. So I took a world politics class, and I was like, wow, just learning this information from the source of a professor that has been working in the government for so many years. It's like, this is, you know, that class also made me realize how, you know, little in the U.S. we're informed about global issues. And I realized that also when I went abroad this summer. But with the U.S. here, we are just so, and that's another reason why I'd advocate for you to, you know, gravitate towards those more traditional news sources over social media, or especially in addition to social media, because I do think that sometimes it's good to not overdose on it, but consume a little bit of that, you know, discourse about what people think about it, because it's important to be in touch with each other. But circling back, I think that, you know, we as Americans pay so little mind to what's going on globally, and it's so important to, you know, push yourself a little bit and get out of you know, just reading about or just listening to or just watching things that pertain to me. And it's important to look at things that pertain to people around the world. And it feels good to be informed. And yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it can bite you in the butt.
No.
Yeah, well, because I would argue that would be kind of a more pressing issue of like trying to be informed about what's going on in the world while also going that extra mile to make sure that the information that you're hearing is like correct.
Yeah.
And like balancing out those, because it's so easy to just use Twitter as like your main source of information. Like it's so much easier to watch like a 30-minute YouTube video explaining to me something than it is to like piece together a story from a bunch of different news outlets. And so, I mean, I would argue that that's, especially with our generation, that's one of the more difficult things, I think, when it comes to, you know, reading information, deciphering information, and just like everything. Yeah. But I do really like, though, like the study of the media and like trying to figure out. So maybe using a past study, like what are some things, like maybe not going into detail about what's going on now, but what are some ideas for ways to study social media and like emotion? Like how do you even go about that? Is it that because I remember doing one like Sona credit, going to and doing a social media thing, which is pretty funny, but like I don't really know exactly how they were doing that or how they're processing for my information. Do you have insight on that?
Not as much as I would like to. Hopefully I can get involved more in depth on, you know, the research and development side, which was a very hard word to say. But yeah, I think that it's an ongoing thing. Obviously the experts on this would know a lot more than I do, and, you know, psychology. it moves fast, but it also moves slow. But people are trying their hardest to develop new strategies. Because I mean, with social media in particular, I think that it's been, difficult to research and get accurate figures because, like something like, I can't even think of a good example. I was going to say even like depression, like a study on depression you could have, because that's been around for such a long time, you could study that and have more sound research that has that repetition to it. But even then, it's like, even things like mental illness has changed with technology. And it's like technology is developing so fast that it's hard to stay caught up. But I think that there's a really lot of smart people in the world of psychology that are tackling that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a well-deserved growing field of research because, like I said, if you see these iPad kids like all the time, like you just instinctively, like your parents complain to you, like I can't imagine they let their kids, like because they know like this is gonna have some effects, negative, positive, the whole shebang, and like we need to kind of figure out like what those are because
it freaks you out a little bit too. It's like even if you look at like the thing with like your pinky is like indented in ways that like your grandparents aren't, and like it's just so crazy to think like you and I, like the whole way that we even like facilitated this couldn't have happened like 20 years ago, like through email and through texting wasn't a thing. We've just evolved so fast to where it's like everything you can do anything from anywhere now, which is a very cool capability, but it's also a capability that we came to very fast. And yeah.
We're like the guinea pigs when it comes to technological advances. One of the things that I've been thinking about recently, and I don't know if you'll have an equivalent to it, I imagine you would, but something that I was thinking about that I thought was pretty interesting with social media and, how I grew up. With our parents, like, especially with TikTok, and for me it was YouTube, like I grew up watching YouTubers play video games like, every day or whatnot. And like when you spend 30 minutes at least every day watching somebody, try to emulate themselves, that person becomes your friend, even though you've never met them in your life. And it's the same with TikTok. Like I'd imagine most people have like TikTokers that they watch all the time and they share their personal stories and tell what it's like, but there's no equivalent to that in the past. Like my parents have no kind of person that they grew up friends with that they've never met.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was talking to my friend and I was texting him and I called these 3 YouTubers by their first names, which are so different than their like profiles. And it's like I was hanging out with them, like they're my buds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it's such an interesting time where we do this weird, it's almost like idolization, but it's like, it's deeper than that.
Yeah, it's a personal, that's such an interesting, facet of our generation. I think I'm so proud of myself. I actually read my media psych textbook this week, and I know it's called a parasocial relationship, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I mean, I think that too, something that, last October, I went to a Harry Styles concert, and it was very, very fun, very sparkly, very cool. But just looking at these people that, camp out for him for 3 days and then post on TikTok, and that's their entire life, and they give up their job and their work, which, idolization has been a thing for a very long time, and people are fans of people. I've, been a fan of like Taylor Swift since I was 10 and whatever, before social media ever lit. But I think that, social media, and I think TikTok in particular is such a unique platform and is really just like, it's like, because, like you were saying, we kind of grew up in the YouTube generation where it's like more long form content and like, you have to take, it might be something where you can just like put it on in the background and, eat with it or whatever. But I think now with TikTok, you can just fall down a rabbit hole of like, here's everything about this person, here's everything about this thing. So yeah, I think that that's really fueled this, unique type of relationship that people can have with people. Like, you definitely don't know Harry Styles personally, but you can scroll for 20 minutes and find out, like, here's something about his birthday. Here's something about the outfit he wore yesterday. Like, it's just, and I think that people do, perceive celebrities in a different way like that, and YouTubers and people like that.
I think it's humanized. It's humanized celebrities a lot more. And in a weird way, if you are a celebrity who's not humanized that kind of way, you're at a disadvantage almost nowadays, where like if you can't express your daily routine on TikTok as a celebrity, your chances of becoming like a today's generation celebrity just decrease, because if I don't know anything about you, then
Yeah.
I don't know. Then I have no
Yeah.
reason to, have this weird idolization thing. And for me, in particular, it's like before I eat a meal, I'm going to set up a YouTube video and watch
Yeah.
someone talk for like 30 minutes. And a lot of these YouTubers now have podcasts too. So it's like, not only am I watching the content that they're making, but I'm also getting an actual dive into what it would be like to have a conversation with this person. And it's a really weird situation to be in that, like, I don't know, I might want to study that to be like, what are the long-term effects of, and in some cases, I imagine instead of making real friends, like, around them, people are just kind of, listening to podcasts or watching YouTubers, and that's kind of replacing the real social interactions with people.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's going to be, something that we'll have to study in the next couple years.
I'm sure, yeah, because definitely our generation, there's numbers for that, that we're less social than the past, and definitely that's a part of it. I mean, it's like, social media makes things so hard, but so easy. It's like, you don't have to, it's so easy to just like, when you're bored, and if you were bored in like 1992, you would be kind of pressed to go out and find something to do, or at least like read a book and like expand your mind in depth on a subject. But now it's like, if I'm feeling, lonely, if I'm feeling insecure, if I'm feeling jealous, I can take that emotion, and instead of, talking it through with somebody else, or, writing it out and like just letting it go, or, finding something to do with it, to resolve it, I can just like put on my adult pacifier TikTok and just like let it fester for a while. Like, it's just like, it's such, a blessing. That's what social media is, such a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, I say, and even more an extent of that, you can put the adult pacifier as such a, I will be using that. You will be hearing me say that from now on. But I mean, even beyond just putting on TikTok and watching that, you can just watch TikToks of people reverberating that exact emotion and making it 10 times worse. You know what I mean? So if like your TikTok circle is only people who kind of are jealous often, or who are like upset often, and you're upset, then you just go and watch them, and then you become even more upset.
No, exactly.
And so it kind of like spreads like wildfire to her. And I think that goes kind of into what we were talking about earlier with like the state of like news or something, where the news is like the adult form of that.
Yeah.
Where like our grandparents don't want to watch TikTok to get that. So instead they watch the news when they're upset about something that might reciprocate that feeling.
Yeah.
And then same with joy, obviously. Like we all love the awesome stories of someone saving someone in a fire or whatnot. But I feel like there's a big generational gap between the kind of content that people are looking for.
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool that you're studying like the media and the psychology thing. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully at some point I'll be involved in doing that too. I think next year I want to start looking at
Super cool. Yeah, I would recommend it.
start looking at labs. So I wanted to talk about the hot take that you wrote down, because I think it actually kind of fits into what we're talking about now. I do not want to misquote you, but if I remember correctly, it was something along the lines of our generation isn't more sensitive. It is more so that we are overstimulated with the environment around us. It was something along those lines, and thus more compassionate. Something along those lines. Is that about right?
Something like that. Yeah. I think that I really love Gen Z. I think that we're pretty cool. Maybe I'm biased, but
Yeah, probably.
I think that people like to talk down to us, and we like to talk down to ourselves about even like not being social, and being lazy, and being too soft or whatever, with the fact that we have higher diagnosis rates of mental illness, and we talk about our feelings a lot more maybe than other generations would. But I think that we just live in a very conscientious generation that's been a product of our environment. I mean, if you think about like the major things that have happened throughout our lives, on top of the rise of technology, which I'd argue has been kind of the biggest, way that's made us different from generations in the past. Obviously everybody that's alive today has gone through that, but we went through like, as we were coming of age, and we're learning different things about ourselves and growing up and developing. Also, technology was developing in a way that the world didn't understand. And so we were kind of, like you said, the guinea pigs in that sense too. But I also think that, we've, like, we were born around, 9/11 time. And we've lived through wars, and we've had really weird presidential elections in the United States. And we've seen a lot of violence, a lot of shootings, COVID, for crying out loud. Like, we haven't had it easy, but I think that, something that's really cool about us is, and I mean, obviously when you go through things like that, that's going to come with some, I don't like to throw around the word trauma. I feel like it's thrown around a lot, but that's going to come with some trauma to an extent. But I'm trying to think. I think that we just live in a very conscientious generation, and that's a product too of being, overstimulated by all the news that we see every day on social media, on, in our classes and everything. And even I would argue, like, the biggest, I am a lot less, I'm a very anxious person, but, I'm a lot less likely to get anxious by seeing someone post, from some vacation to Jamaica that I'm jealous of on Instagram. That's a lot less likely to make me anxious and nervous and insecure or whatever than an Outlook email that pops up. Because it's like we're also part of this, online education generation, which is cool and great, and it makes it more accessible to everyone. But also it's like, if you were going to college in 1984 or whatever, you would get your assignments, you would talk to your professor, you'd walk out. And that's what you had to do for the weekend. And you would call somebody and arrange, I don't really know how it would work on a college campus.
It's weird to imagine it. Now that you brought that up.
But like if you had to do something with somebody, you would arrange it in person or you would call them and that'd be it. And it's like here, we can communicate with anybody in any realm of our lives at like all the time. And that's really, it's cool. It's cool that you can be here and be so in touch with maybe loved ones that are far away. But it's also like, it's nice that I have the capability to be flexible with the work that I'm doing academically or professionally or whatever. But it's also like, now there's this notification sitting on my phone and it's 5:30 on Friday and I really just want to relax. But now this has made me more anxious and now I'm really worried and this is going to kind of ruin my Friday. It's like we have had to also be the guinea pigs for that kind of the bleed over of all areas of our lives. And, it's been stressful. And I think that our generation cares a lot about politics, about social issues, about everything. And, we're just trying our best. So.
Yeah, wow, that's a really awesome point that you brought up with like how instantaneous we can get communication. I mean, specifically with our professors, but I never even considered that to be like a stressor. But subconsciously it had always been, because I think what it does, and I mean, you can correct me if you disagree, but like what it does is it raises the ceiling of opportunity to just infinity. So it's like originally you were kind of constricted to the time of day. So like you had to talk to somebody, you had to go out and communicate. But now if I want to get something done, I can just instantly email somebody and get that thing done. And so once everything becomes instant, it's like you can do a million things in a day. And so now you and me, our success is kind of dependent on if I took advantage of that instantaneousness. Yeah, and if you see me taking advantage of that, that sparks a million different feelings in you. Now every email you get is compared to how fast I would have emailed back or how fast I would have taken care of that task.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about that, but it makes sense. I do think it's true as well.
Yeah. And it all just fuels this like, grind culture, if you will, which is like, oh, right? That's such we just stop using that, please. But
the word grind.
Let's stop. Just
Rise,
stop the
rise and grind.
But it's just so hard to, especially for, like kids who maybe grew up in that, former gifted kid, whatever, like achievement mentality. It's difficult to know when to stop and to stop like, that boundary used to be set for you. It's like, this is when I go to school. This is when I go to work. This is when I am meeting with my professor or whatever. But now, since everything can happen so instantaneously, even when you've developed, and I see it in, myself and in my friends and in people, it's like, it makes it hard to be fully there. It's like, I obviously we didn't live there at that time. So this is just, kind of speculation, but it's like, if it was a decade that didn't have that technology and that social media aspect. If you were out with your friends on a Friday night and you were thinking about, maybe this like term paper or whatever you had to do that you were nervous about and you want feedback for your professor, you worry about that to an extent, but, you can't do anything about it, obviously, because your professor's not there, you're not there, you can't go to campus that time. But, if you have a professor that's willing to email back with you at 9:30 on a Friday, which a lot of them do set boundaries, and I really respect that. The professors that don't, answer their emails over the weekend and things like that. But, it's like, could I do this? It's like, and that's a really cool, it's such like I feel like that's kind of been the thing, is it's like so tough because it's so great, but it's also so bad.
Yeah.
Like you can do anything you want in this world. You could go get a job in India right now if you wanted to, just by filling out some stuff online. But also, it's that, where does that, like, what else can I do line stop? And I feel like that's something that I've definitely struggled with personally, and I know a lot of friends of mine have.
Yeah, it's like, it's the constant presence of things to do and this constant pressure to take advantage of those things. And that's a good point, that it existed in the past, but not as loud as it is now. So I'm going to ask you kind of a difficult question. So if you're ready for it.
Yeah.
So I think that the opposite opinion of this would be that kids in our generation are just like weak, and the solution would be to toughen up. And so like the mindset with that is, I want to encourage people to get tougher and like handle this. So like, what would your mindset be? Like, what would your solution be? Like, because if you're gonna have a thought like this, that like everything's really, stressful, like why are you expressing this? You know what I mean? Like, what do you want to gain from this? How does it benefit you to think this way? Like, what are you doing about it in your personal life?
Yeah, I think that it's something that's just important to acknowledge. I think I would agree with you. I think it's so important to not like, that was, sorry, I just got distracted. I was like, this microphone picks up everything. I think that it's something that's, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's something that's so important to, keep that in the back of your mind and know that, we are, as in this context, a victim of our circumstances, but everybody's a victim of their circumstances in one way or another. It's the way the world always has been and the way the world always will be. Hard things happen to people. Circumstances aren't the best. Some circumstances are good. You're privileged in some light and you aren't in other ways. But the important thing about, once you acknowledge that is, what am I going to do with it? How am I going to make a plan for myself? And I feel like for me personally, after COVID, I've definitely been like a goer. Like we
double major, minor.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And, it has its drawbacks, but I think that I've really made a point to, capitalize on every opportunity that I can, and make sure that the things that are important to me get done, because you don't know when those things are going to happen. And also just, I think that once you acknowledge, hey, we do live in this society where it's so easy to get caught up in things and stress about things. It's so important to just make a plan, write it down, schedule things, acknowledge that things are probably going to come up and go wrong, and then just do things. I think that it's, it's the worst advice ever. Just like do stuff.
Just do it.
Just get out there and do it. But like, really, I think that it's so easy, like, to get caught up mentally in the million things that you need to do. But just, seek out what is important to you. And I think that comes very naturally, kind of as you go along in your education and your personal development throughout college. And, when an opportunity comes up that you're really, really excited about, just do it and make that time. And, try your best to ignore the little stuff. And I think that something that's so important throughout college, particularly in a major like psychology, people are always asking you, what's the plan? Like, what are you doing? It's like, and that is important too, to have an outlook on the future. These are the steps I can take to get to this career or this grad school program or whatever it may be. But the more important thing is just learning, professionalism, and acknowledging that, this job that I want in the future might not look exactly the same, or it might not be there. And, this thing that I want tomorrow could change automatically. So yeah, I think that very, very long-winded answer to say, the mindset that, we have had some setbacks coming from our generation. I think that, acknowledge that, let it go, recognize the way that it's affected you, recognize that, I've been scrolling on TikTok for a long time. I feel really inferior. I feel really stressed. Feel that. And if you need help to feel that, by all means, talk to a friend, go to therapy. I'm such a big advocate for, you don't let emotions fester. They obviously do it in the right ways. Here's the word, don't trauma dump on a friend. But, talk through your emotions, write through your emotions. And again, that's another really cool thing I think about our generation is that we are I think we're in just this mindset of, healing ourselves and acknowledging, not what's wrong with us, but, what is wrong with us? What within ourselves do we need to address? A lot of our people from our generation go to therapy, and I think that's super, super cool. Huge advocate for that. Because I think that there are a lot of older people that are wonderful people and who have achieved a lot, but never really address the insecurities that hold them back and never really address the ways that they have been treated or the ways that they've acted that have inhibited them from being their best selves. But I think our generation is really just geared towards the mindset of fixing that and making ourselves our best selves, which I think is really cool. Which that put me on another tangent that made me kind of forget where I was, but let me get back there. Long-winded answer to the other question that I got another long-winded answer to is just, we're in a rough spot. We can't just, muddle in that and feel sorry for ourselves. Acknowledge it, work with people to put yourself in the place that you want to get to, and just go after what you want to do.
Yeah, well, because the reason why I asked it, and I think that's a very good answer, I think a lot of people, when they hear things like that, with the way, like we were talking about, like how emotions can be amplified really easily and accessibly through, a bunch of different avenues, especially for our generation, like everyone's talking at us all at once. And so when you say things like that our generation isn't this, it's just that, like, we've been through this or we're growing up in this kind of generation, like, people kind of cling on to that aspect of it, and they don't really cling on to okay, here's the solution to that, or here's why I'm saying it. Here's what I want you guys to pick up.
Yeah.
And so, I think a lot of people, when they talk about that, they use it as an excuse, and that's just it.
Yeah.
When I really liked the way you put it in that, like, accept it, understand it, move on from it. Because I think that's the most important. That's the most important part, because it actually brought, like, a good perspective on the way that I thought about it, to where, like, we have constant access to, a million ways to push our lives forward much quicker than ever before, really, nowadays. And just a lot of people, I think they struggle with their own self-conscious, like, oh, I'm not taking advantage of this enough. And nobody's really put it in that perspective, like, hey, everyone struggles, and, like, right now it seems like you're struggling with this overwhelming opportunity to do things. And, like, hey, it's okay to take a break.
Exactly.
Accept that, but move on and, like, learn how to manage your opportunities.
Yeah.
Learn how to, find an opportunity that you're willing to pursue more so than others. So I didn't think, by the way, no such thing as a long-winded answer. Just keep talking. I really don't mind. As long as you're saying things that make sense or that are good, like, go on. Like you said, girl boss in the questionnaire thing. I thought it was pretty. Who called you the demon?
Oh my God, that would be my friend. In the questionnaire, I asked to describe what a friend would say about me, and I asked my childhood friend, who I've known since I was 4 and was my neighbor, to describe me in one word. And I asked 2 other friends, and they were like, "Oh, you're funny, you're sweet, you have good fashion sense." And Hannah, my friend from a long time, just said, "You are Satan's spawn on earth."
Yeah.
That's when you have a good friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
The best friends in life are the ones that you literally, like, recoil at the idea of hugging, and it's not, like, that's how you know you're close.
That one friend.
Yeah.
Well, I'll admit it put a pretty awesome, entry for me, like, reading up on you and, like, figuring out what I was going to ask you. And then I see that and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, cool.
No. I figured. I mean, I hoped it wasn't someone's actual response, asking my enemies what they think about me. That would be a cool question to have on there. Like, what would
your enemies say?
Yeah, like, what would people that dislike you say about you? Because what would people that dislike you say about you?
Ooh, I don't know.
Are there people that dislike you?
No.
Who?
Everybody loves me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes I have a tendency to take things too seriously, which, I'm just an anxious person naturally. So maybe that, I can never shut up, really. That's one. I don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's a good question. That's a good thing to know about people beforehand. Because that's the biggest thing is just like ask questions.
What's the worst quality about you?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good question. Like, what's your toxic trait from your perspective? Because mine is like, I can't even think of one. I'm just so perfect. I can't think of one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my biggest pet peeve is when people are like, you ask people, what is, your worst quality, and they like job interview you and be like, I just care too much.
Yeah.
I work too hard.
I mean, I'm just too honest.
Dude, come on.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm a procrastinator, I'm lazy.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Come on, give it to me.
Yeah.
I'm probably, I can be, I feel like that's one of my worst traits. As I'm an overthinker and it leads me to be a procrastinator, it's like I just work myself up and then I don't.
Yeah, I think I'm over analytic on things that just should not be taken that seriously. It's just like someone will say something to me and I'll be like, no, that's cool because it's like deep like this, and then they're like, I that's not what I wanted to talk about at all.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, just no, super interesting. And so, it's kind of funny because because I am a psychology major, I am allowed to ask this.
Yes.
What are your plans after this? What do you plan on doing?
Couple different pathways I'm considering right now. With that second major in public relations, like that might seem like a weird path to go down for a psych major, but maybe working in a public relations agency just because there's so much psych that goes into that, as is everything. That qualitative research part of it and just gauging how publics will react to the content that you put out. And creating PR is just really like the humanistic side, in my opinion, of the media. It's, it kind of gets a bad rep for being kind of like the evil side, which I don't really get, which I get, but I don't really get, it's spin and whatever.
Yeah.
But, I'm interested in contributing to that field with my psych background, as well as obviously my public relations background. And then on the other side, I'm also thinking about doing grad school in industrial organizational psychology. And probably a master's program originally, and then maybe going into PhD. But still got a little bit of time, not as much time as I would like. Very scared. I'm a December grad this year, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the year I graduate college. Yeah. Because oh my God, coming in 2020, that first year doesn't feel real at all.
No, I feel so bad for you guys in that generation because I came the year after, so I was 2021. Yeah, so I'm a sophomore this year, and just the horror stories I hear about, like the COVID Gestapo, like pulling up in vans and like grabbing people and putting them in the COVID dorms.
It was such a surreal experience. I'm glad, looking back, I'm glad I did it in the long run because I think it just got me. It was hard, it wasn't fun, but it got me here, and it got me, I think a lot more involvement on campus than I would have otherwise, and a lot more, commitment to like the Iowa State community than I would have otherwise. But yeah. Something I think that helped was that we were like a little bit delusional about it too. Like I remember getting here, like the whole freshman year, we were just like, oh, because I had like one class each semester that was in person, and I was like, well, this is basically like college. I like go to class once a week. I study in the library, whatever. Like we can't go to football games and whatever, but they're on TV. Like, this is pretty much college. And then we got there I remember just texting with my friends on the first day of my sophomore year. And just being like, dude, there's so many people here. What is this place? What's going on? Like, it was just unbelievable.
It's wild.
It was like COVID year, like it was just so isolating. And I think that, a lot of people really I know that I did mental health wise struggle a lot during that year. A lot of people did. A lot of people, ended up, dropping out or transferring or pursuing other pathways. It was just it's challenging, but challenge is always worth it in a lot of ways.
That's what I was about to ask you. That you kind of answered my question, but for me, like I couldn't imagine paying full price for tuition.
That's the part.
Wasting not wasting, but like getting it's almost like diet college. It's like getting getting a watered down version of your college experience as your first year. Like, and I don't like online classes.
No,
period.
They're just
like nothing vibes harder than longboarding to class or walking to class
No,
with
for real,
music
yeah.
and like knowing having a physical representation, which is time you've put into your study. That's like really important, at least for me.
Yeah.
Like it justifies me being there because I spent 15 hours this week literally in a
Yeah,
class
physically
doing the
there.
work. And
Yeah.
so just like instead of showing that commitment, like, oh, I sat in my room for 15 hours to show my commitment to college.
Yeah.
Like I could not, that of course that's going to have some negative effects on people.
Yeah, and I feel like too, our class, like I guess class of 2024 here, high school class of 2020, we got so much like pity in the media of like our prom and our graduation, and we're like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, I'll take it. Like, I was working at Hy-Vee at the time, and I got a lot of customers just like, I'm so sorry, you know, you'll never get those memories back, and I'm like, hey, thanks, see you later. But I really think in a lot of ways we kind of came in at the right time because we did get that like transitional period cut off. Because you know, if you were, I can't imagine, you know, doing a year of like normal college and then going through that. Like I can't. That would make me kind of go crazy. Because
Oh,
you don't know what you're missing. We were just like I said, like this is college. What do you mean? Like this is what it is. And then we got a pleasant surprise. Whether or not it was pleasant is debatable because it was kind of you just spent a bunch of money on a year that really sucked. But pleasant if you look at it in
Just it all
the right
depends on the
mindset.
perspective.
But you know, I couldn't imagine that. But I also couldn't imagine, you know, like being a peer mentor now and like looking at these freshmen who like, you know, your junior and senior year of high school is I feel like the time when you really start to, you know, become a person is the wrong words, but like kind of just like really start to develop like, you know, your own interest and an idea of, obviously you're like 17, so it's not right necessarily, but like really start to dig in,
think about it.
Think about developing, you know, who do I want to be? What's my character? What are my values? You know, who do I align with as a person? What are my goals? And like to have that, like that whole chunk of time cut out and, you know, that period of involvement in activities and whatever cut out. I couldn't even imagine that.
Yeah, I think I got a good end because I was from a small town, small area. So
Yeah.
like we weren't really too worried about COVID. And like
Yeah.
we still, I mean, our school was the last to shut down in our area.
Yeah.
And like, so it didn't really affect us that much. But there are other timelines where it could have been much worse for me or for, you know, people in that generation. But I'm probably going to end it there. We're reaching about an hour.
Yeah.
Definitely do another episode at some point. But is there any sort of plugging you want to do for Trend, for the psychology department, for the psychology club? Any last
Okay. I don't know. You can
meeting times or-
follow Psych Club ISU on Instagram. You can find Trend magazines around campus. You can follow Trend Magazine on Instagram. You can join the Media Research Lab. You can, I don't know. Yeah. Just have a good time. That's my advice. To you.
Yeah. Good advice. Just have fun is really what it is.
Show up. Be a cyclone. You know, I don't know. But
All right. Well, it was awesome having you on.
Yeah, it was
Jessica.
great to talk to you.
All right.
Thanks.
Awesome.